My aunt didn't even wait for the ceremony to end before sending the text. The message vibrated in my gown pocket as the university orchestra played the soft, wandering notes of the prelude. Families clapped, students fixed their caps, and the sunlight filtered through the stadium rafters in long golden streaks that made everything feel warmer than it actually was. I could smell sunscreen, wilting flowers, and the faint tang of metal from the railings behind us. People always imagine graduations as glamorous, but in reality they're patchworks, half nostalgia, half nerves, half sweat. And in the middle of that noise, the vibration hit again. I pulled out my phone. "Aunt Lisa, don't expect help. You're on your own." No punctuation at the end. That was her way, words clipped clean, like she didn't want emotion catching in the seams of her sentences. I stared at the message for a moment, letting the heat settle along my collarbone. A breeze kicked up, carrying the smell of fresh-cut grass and someone's too strong perfume. Students laughed behind me, tossing jokes back and forth as if the world was already theirs. My world, for a brief second, narrowed to a tiny glowing rectangle. My name is Avery Sloan. I'm 29 years old, and the morning my aunt tried to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy, my CFO called with the kind of news that shakes the bones of an entire legacy. He thought she was warning me. She had no idea the ground was already shifting beneath her feet. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. It means more than you know. Aunt Lisa had been both a wall and a windstorm in my life, blocking what I needed, destroying what I built too carefully, but always doing it with that signature quietness that made people believe she meant well. She raised me for a few years after my mom passed, but even then I was more lodger than daughter. She liked order, structure, control. I liked breathing. When I founded my startup at 23, she shook her head and told me it was a hobby for clever children. When we hit our first $1 million in revenue, she said, "That's nice. But businesses crumble." When we secured Series B funding, she waved it off. "Investors waste money all the time." And on the morning of my graduation, my second degree, the one she insisted was unnecessary, she told me not to expect help. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and tried to focus on the ceremony. The university president spoke into the microphone, his voice echoing across the stadium like a warm hum. Families cheered. The air buzzed with anticipation. But somewhere beneath all that noise, I felt a strange stillness forming. A pause in the universe. A breath before a storm. Another memory surfaced. One of those quiet, drifting ones that shows up only when something big is about to break. I was 16, sitting at the kitchen table while Aunt Lisa sorted mail into ruthless piles. Bills, advertisements, envelopes she'd open only if she felt like caring that day. She slid one letter toward me without looking up. "You should understand," she said, slicing open another envelope, "that people like us don't get ahead. We survive. If you're smart, you won't expect more than that." The overhead light flickered, casting a weak glow across the laminate. I remember the smell of burnt toast and the way she didn't make eye contact. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't think she needed to. I learned something that day. People who don't believe in you will always work hardest to keep you small. The ceremony continued. Names were called, tassels were moved, caps nearly flew off in the breeze. My hands steadied on my lap. I breathed slow. Then, midway through the dean's speech, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't my aunt. I pulled it out, expecting perhaps a friend, maybe even someone lost in the crowd. Instead, CFO Elena, incoming call. My breath hitched. Not from fear, from recognition. Elena never called during major events. He texted. She emailed. She respected boundaries like they were sacred architecture. She was calling, something had happened. I stepped into the aisle as quietly as possible, the sound of applause washing over me like a soft wave. I walked toward the edge of the stadium, the sharp smell of concession stand popcorn drifting past. I answered in a whisper. "Elena." Her voice trembled, not with fear but with adrenaline. "Avery, the IPO hit $6 billion. The words didn't land all at once. They hit in layers. $6 billion. The air around me sharpened. The sky felt brighter. My pulse thrummed like a distant drum. Students laughed nearby, oblivious. A child cried. Someone dropped a soda cup. The world stayed ordinary while mine cracked open. "We're going live in 12 minutes, Elena continued. "The board wants a statement from you. They want you ready." I closed my eyes. The breeze tugged gently at the hem of my gown. For a moment I wasn't standing in a stadium. I was back in that small kitchen at 16 with my aunt slicing envelopes and slicing futures. Tut now. I had a future she could no longer hold in her hands. "I'll be ready," I whispered. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. Behind me I heard footsteps. Quick, sharp, purposeful. When I turned I saw her, Aunt Lisa, weaving through the folding chairs, her handbag swinging as she hurried toward me. Her expression was tight, strained, something between confusion and panic. She must have heard my end of the call. Or maybe she just felt the shift in the air. Her voice cracked slightly. "Avery? What was that? What happened?" For the first time in my life she looked uncertain. Small. Human. I didn't answer immediately. I let the breeze fill the silence. Let the sunlight warm my shoulders. Let her feel the weight of the moment before I handed it to her. The stadium quieted behind us as another speaker walked to the microphone. The murmuring crowd softened. Somewhere a flag flapped lightly. And I realized. This wasn't revenge. This was a realignment. The world was finally adjusting to the truth of who I had always been. I looked at her, not with anger, not with triumph, but with the calm of someone who had finally stepped into her own life. The calm of a woman the world had underestimated for too long. And everything that followed. Every conversation, every silence, every shift in the air. All of it began with the sentence I spoke next. "Avery, what did she say?" My aunt's voice wavered as she reached me, breath catching from her hurried steps. I had seen her annoyed, commanding, dismissive, but never unsure. Not like this. Not with her hands trembling just slightly as she adjusted the strap of her handbag. Behind her, families continued cheering as another row of graduates stood for their moment. A child somewhere squealed with delight. Sunlight bounced off the edge of the stadium seats, leaving thin gold streaks across the concrete. Life kept moving, unaware that one woman's entire worldview had just tilted. I kept my phone loosely in my hand, its screen still glowing faintly with Elena's call summary. 6 billion. A valuation number that rewrites destinies, rearranges dynamics, and exposes every quiet doubt someone ever had about you. My aunt stepped closer. "Avery, talk to me. What IPO? What does 6 billion mean? Why is your CFO calling you during your graduation?" Her tone carried an old instinct, a habit of authority she used to believe she had over me. But beneath it there was something else. A fracture. A hesitation. A dawning awareness that the story she'd always told herself about me was no longer true. I inhaled slowly. The air smelled like warm concrete, distant cotton candy, and the faint sweetness of the flowers pinned to gowns all around us. "It means," I said softly, "that the company I built went public this morning." She blinked. Twice. The wind lifted a strand of her hair, brushing it across her cheek. She didn't move to fix it. "But, you never told us it was serious. You said it was a startup. You said you were just trying something." Her voice shrank on the last two words. I felt the memory unspool without permission. 17 years old, sitting at the same kitchen table we shared for years, papers spread in front of me. Business ideas, design drafts, scribbled notes. She didn't look at any of them. She just stirred her coffee and said, "Dreams are fine, Avery. But they don't pay rent. Be realistic." I didn't argue. I learned early that arguments weren't doors, they were walls. Now here we were, standing in a stadium filled with other people's celebrations, while my aunt tried to reopen a door she'd welded shut years ago. "So you're saying," she whispered, "that you're a billionaire," I finished gently. The word didn't echo. It wasn't loud enough for that. It settled instead, soft, inevitable, like the last puzzle piece slipping into place. Graduation tassels rustled behind us. Someone's camera clicked. A grandmother laughed. My aunt didn't seem to hear any of it. Her face went slack for a moment, then reorganized itself with the frantic precision of someone trying to catch falling pieces midair. She looked around as if checking whether anyone else had heard, as if reality required witnesses to become true. "Why didn't you tell us?" she finally asked. I met her eyes, not with anger but with a clarity years in the making. "Because," I said, "you weren't listening when it mattered." A breeze shifted through the rows of seats, carrying murmurs and applause with it. She stared at me as if weighing the sentence, trying to understand whether it was accusation or fact. Maybe it was both. I continued, voice steady. I told you I was launching something. You said it wasn't real work. I told you investors were interested. You told me investors waste money. I told you we'd hit our milestones. You told me I should focus on stable jobs. My throat tightened, not with pain but with release. You never believed in me. And that's okay. I stopped needing you to. A cluster of graduates walked by us, tassels swinging, laughter drifting effortlessly into the sunlit air. One girl held her parents' hands on both sides, beaming. Another held a bouquet of hydrangeas. Life looked easy for them, but I knew better. Everyone carries something. My aunt pressed a hand to her chest. Maybe out of shock. Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of something she couldn't name yet. Avery, she said quietly, I didn't mean. I never wanted you to feel alone. You didn't want me to feel independent, I corrected, but gently. There's a difference. The words came out in a warm exhale, not a weapon. The older I got, the more I realized the truth didn't need sharp edges. It just needed room. Another memory surfaced. 12 years old, sitting in the backseat of her sedan while rain clattered against the roof. I had asked her why she never came to my school events. She kept her eyes on the road and said, You're strong. You don't need that kind of attention. But I did. Everyone does. Attention isn't weakness, it's nourishment. Standing here now, diploma inches away, billions in motion, I felt none of the triumph people expect from stories like this. Just quiet. Quiet and release. My aunt looked at the stage, blinking hard as one of the final speakers approached the podium. The microphone squealed briefly before settling. So what happens now? She asked. I let that question sit in the warm air between us. I go take my call, I said. I give my statement. I step into the life I built. And you, I paused, not unkindly. You step into yours. She looked smaller than I remembered, less like the force of nature she'd always been and more like someone standing too close to a truth they never prepared for. But Avery, family stays together. I shook my head gently. Family listens, I said. Family lifts. Family believes. What we had wasn't that. Her breath caught. I didn't fill the silence. The stadium did that for me. Waves of applause, a name called, the rustle of gowns. Life affirming itself. My phone buzzed again. Lena. Press wants your quote in 5 minutes. Congratulations, Avery. You earned all of this. My aunt saw the notification over my shoulder. Something broke a little in her eyes, not like glass but like ice. Fully. Inevitably. From warmth finally reaching it. I took a step back, then another. Avery, she whispered, please don't shut me out. I gave her a soft, steady look. You shut me out a long time ago. Her lips parted as if to protest, but she didn't. Couldn't. Maybe the truth finally weighed more than the denial holding it back. I turned toward the exit tunnel of the stadium. The light at the end was bright, almost blinding for a second. My shoes tapped gently against the concrete as I walked. Behind me, I heard her inhale sharply. Then nothing. If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. Outside, the sky had shifted, a deeper blue now, wide and full of promise. A breeze carried the faint smell of pavement warming under the sun, mixed with the sweetness of someone's celebratory cake nearby. I lifted my phone, ready to step into a call that would change the architecture of my life forever. And for the first time in years, I felt entirely, unquestionably mine. Some distances protect us better.